Every single one of us wants to achieve greatness. We look at the goals we set for ourselves, we look at the year ahead, and we imagine a version of our lives that is bigger, more impactful, and deeply fulfilling. But if we want to build a life that is truly unstoppable, we have to stop looking at what we want to achieve and start looking at why and how we operate. Being unstoppable isn't about running faster than everyone else. It's not about working yourself to the bone or forcing your way through obstacles with sheer willpower. True transformation is an inside game. It is about understanding the underlying human mechanics of discipline, focus, and belief. If you want to take complete control and transform your life fast this year, you must commit to a new set of operating rules. Here are the 7 rules to become unstoppable. 1. Start with your foundation. Most people start a new chapter by listing the external things they want to acquire. They say, I want a better job, more money, or a fitter body. But they skip the foundation. If you do not understand the deeply rooted purpose behind your actions, your motivation will evaporate the moment things get difficult. When your why is clear, the how becomes possible. Before you chase any goal, you must establish the core reason you are pursuing it. Your foundation is your anchor. Without it, you are just drifting. To guard your attention closely, we live in an economy that trades on our distraction. Every app, every notification, and every flashing screen is designed to pull you away from your deep work. To become unstoppable, you have to realize that your attention is your most valuable asset. When you scatter your focus across 50 different directions, you make millimeter progress in all of them but achieve true depth in none. Choose what matters, lock in on it, and aggressively eliminate the digital noise that drains your cognitive energy. 3. Fall in love with the boring routine. We love the idea of sudden success. We love the dramatic breakthrough moments we see in movies. But real lasting transformation is incredibly boring. It is the unglamorous, repetitive daily choices that no one sees and no one applauds. It's waking up early when you're tired, practicing the basic skills over and over, and sticking to the process when the excitement has worn off. Unstoppable people do not rely on flashes of inspiration. They rely on the absolute certainty of their daily habits. 4. Build a circle of high expectations. Human beings are tribal creatures. We naturally adapt to the behaviors, mindsets, and emotional baselines of the people we spend the most time with. If your inner circle is comfortable with mediocrity, you will eventually lower your standards to match theirs. If you want to grow rapidly, you must surround yourself with people who hold themselves to a higher standard, who challenge your excuses, and who inspire you simply by how they show up in their own lives. 5. Take immediate ownership of everything. The moment you blame an external factor for your situation, whether it's the economy, your environment, or your past, you hand over your power to that factor. You are essentially saying, I cannot change until my circumstances change. Unstoppable individuals practice extreme accountability. Even if a situation isn't your fault, it is always your responsibility to determine how you respond to it. When you own everything, you gain the power to change everything. 6. Protect your mental margins. True productivity requires recovery. Think of your mind like a high-performance engine. If you run it at maximum RPM constantly without stopping for maintenance, it will inevitably break down. You cannot build a transformative life if you are permanently exhausted and operating in survival mode. You must build intentional white space into your days. Time to think, time to disconnect, and time to rest. Protect your peace fiercely so you always operate from a place of clarity rather than panic. 7. Move before you feel ready. The biggest trap that keeps smart, ambitious people stuck is the illusion of perfect readiness. We tell ourselves we need one more certification, a bit more data, or the perfect timing before we take action. But clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. The path only reveals itself once you start walking. Unstoppable people accept the discomfort of imperfect action. They launch, they learn, they adapt, and they keep moving forward. 5 keynotes of the speech, the foundation of purpose. Real change never starts with what you want to achieve. It must begin with a deeply rooted understanding of why it matters to you. Without a clear inner foundation, external goals quickly crumble under pressure. The economy of focus. Success in the modern era is directly tied to your ability to resist distraction. Guarding your attention and focusing deeply on one major priority at a time yields massive breakthroughs that scattered effort can never match. The power of Manani transformation is not driven by rare moments of grand inspiration, but by the compounding effect of quiet, daily, and often boring routines executed with absolute consistency. Radical accountability. Blaming circumstances strips away your control. Taking full ownership of your reactions and next steps, regardless of the situation, is the ultimate source of personal power. Action precedes clarity. Waiting for perfect certainty or complete readiness is a form of procrastination. True momentum and understanding are unlocked only through the willingness to take imperfect, immediate action. To truly understand what it takes to become unstoppable, we have to look beneath the surface of human ambition. When we think about changing our lives, our natural instinct is to focus entirely on the destination. We map out the milestones, we visualize the end results, and we create elaborate lists of the things we want to achieve, acquire, or become. We tell ourselves that once we reach those targets, everything else will fall into place. Yet, if we observe the pattern of human behavior, we see a recurring phenomenon, a massive wave of initial enthusiasm followed by a sharp, inevitable crash. People set bold goals in moments of high energy, only to abandon them a few weeks later when the friction of daily life sets in. This happens because most people design their goals from the outside in, focusing entirely on the what while completely ignoring the underlying foundation. Real, lasting transformation never begins with what you want to achieve. It must begin with a deeply rooted understanding of why that achievement matters to you on a fundamental level. Think of your life as a structure. The goals you set, the career advancements, the financial milestones, the physical fitness targets are the visible parts of the building. They are the walls, the windows, and the roof. But a building does not stand because its walls are beautiful. It stands because its foundation is sunk deep into the earth. If the ground beneath it shifts, or if the foundation is weak and shallow, the entire structure will collapse. No matter how grand it looks from the outside, your why is that foundation. It is the core purpose, the driving belief, and the emotional anchor that stabilizes everything else you build. When you operate without a clear inner foundation, your motivation becomes entirely dependent on external conditions. If the weather is nice, if people are cheering you on, or if you see immediate progress, you feel motivated to keep going. But the moment the environment changes, the moment you face criticism, exhaustion, or a plateau where progress stalls, that superficial motivation completely evaporates. External rewards are unreliable fuel. They might give you a temporary spark to start the engine, but they cannot sustain a long, difficult journey. A deeply held purpose, however, changes your relationship with hardship. When the reason behind your actions is bigger than the discomfort of the moment, the discomfort ceases to be a reason to quit. It simply becomes a cost you are willing to pay. This shifting of perspective is what separates the casual trier from the truly unstoppable individual. When your foundation is solid, you are no longer chasing success just to prove something to the world or to fulfill an arbitrary expectation. You are moving towards something that aligns with your deepest identity. This intrinsic alignment creates a psychological resilience that external goals simply cannot provide. It allows you to navigate the long, quiet valleys of the journey where there is no applause, no immediate reward, and no visible progress. In those moments when anyone else would look at the situation and decide it isn't worth the effort, your inner foundation acts as a compass, reminding you that the work itself has meaning because it serves a larger purpose. Building this foundation requires an uncomfortable amount of honesty. It means looking at your goals and asking yourself the hard questions multiple times, peeling back the layers of superficial desires until you reach the emotional truth beneath them. If you want to build a successful business, why? Is it just for the money? Or is it because you deeply value autonomy and want to create a space where others can thrive? If you want to transform your health, why? Is it for the validation of a look? Or is it because you want the vital energy required to show up fully for your family and your community? The deeper you dig, the stronger your anchor becomes. When you anchor your ambitions in a profound internal truth, you insulate yourself against the distractions and doubts that cause others to drift. You stop looking for permission from the outside world because the mandate to move forward is coming entirely from within. You become resilient, consistent, and ultimately completely unstoppable. In the modern landscape of human achievement, the greatest obstacle to excellence is no longer a lack of information, opportunity, or resources. We live in an era where the answers to almost any technical question are available at our fingertips, and the tools required to build a global business, learn a new skill, or launch a creative project are more accessible than ever before. Yet, despite this unprecedented abundance, true progress remains incredibly rare. The bottleneck has shifted. Success in our current world is no longer about what you can access. It is entirely about what you can resist. The ability to manage, protect, and direct your attention has become the definitive currency of the 21st century. If you want to achieve something meaningful, you have to recognize that your attention is not an infinite resource that can be carelessly scattered throughout the day. It is your most valuable asset, and it is under constant systemic assault. We live in a highly sophisticated economy that trades directly on our distraction. The brightest minds and the most advanced algorithms in the world are currently working together with a singular goal: to capture your gaze and hold it for as long as possible. Every notification that flashes on your screen, every algorithmically tailored feed, and every red badge on an app icon is designed to trigger a microscopic burst of dopamine that pulls you away from your deep work. When you allow these external forces to dictate where your mind goes, you are effectively giving away your personal power. You become a passive consumer of other people's agendas rather than the active author of your own life. To become truly unstoppable, you must transition from being a target of this distraction economy to being an aggressive protector of your cognitive energy. The danger of constant distraction is not just that it wastes time. It fundamentally alters the quality of your output. When you switch your focus from a complex task to a quick notification and then back again, your brain does not make a clean break. A psychological phenomenon known as attention residue occurs. A piece of your cognitive capacity remains fixed on the previous interruption, meaning you return to your primary task with diminished mental horsepower. If you are constantly checking your phone, replying to non-urgent messages, or jumping between 50 open tabs, your mind is perpetually fractured. You might be working for 8 hours a day, but because your attention is scattered in a dozen different directions, you are only making millimeter progress in all of them. You achieve a wide, shallow pool of activity, but completely fail to achieve any real depth or breakthrough quality. Massive breakthroughs and elite performance require deep, uninterrupted immersion. When you lock onto one major priority and eliminate the background noise, something extraordinary happens to your capability. Your brain enters a state of cognitive flow where complex problem solving becomes possible, creative connections are formed, and the speed of execution multiplies. This level of depth cannot be reached in 15-minute increments broken up by social media checks. It requires long, protected blocks of time where you intentionally close the door on the outside world. Guarding your attention means establishing firm boundaries with technology and with the people around you. It means accepting the temporary discomfort of missing a message or being slow to reply in exchange for the long-term fulfillment of producing something undeniable. Ultimately, taking control of your life is a battle fought in the quiet spaces of your daily routine. It is decided by whether you choose to react to every buzz in your pocket or choose to remain anchored to the work in front of you. Unstoppable people do not possess more hours in the day than anyone else. They simply possess a higher reverence for the hours they have. They understand that a scattered mind produces a scattered life, while a fiercely protected focus creates massive, compounded leverage over time. When you decide that your goals are more important than the temporary novelty of a digital distraction, you reclaim your mental autonomy. You stop drifting through the noise of the world and begin moving forward with a quiet, concentrated force that cannot be disrupted. We live in a culture that is deeply in love with the dramatic finale. We celebrate the breakthrough moments, the massive product launches, the sudden weight loss transformations, and the overnight success stories that flash across our screens. We like to imagine that greatness is born in a single, heroic moment of inspiration or a monumental stroke of good fortune. But this romanticized view of achievement is a profound illusion. If you pull back the curtain on any individual who has built something that truly lasts, you quickly discover that the dramatic breakthroughs are merely the inevitable byproduct of a much quieter, less glamorous reality. True, lasting transformation is built entirely on a foundation of intense monotony. To become genuinely unstoppable, you must abandon the childish desire for constant novelty and learn to fall deeply in love with the boring daily routine. The reality of high performance is that it is incredibly repetitive. It is the unglamorous execution of basic fundamentals, day in and day out, long after the initial wave of excitement has completely evaporated. When you start a new journey, the novelty provides a natural emotional high. The first week of a new business, a new fitness regimen, or a new creative project feels electric because it is fresh and full of promise. But eventually, the novelty wears off, the fresh feeling disappears, and you are left facing the grinding reality of the work itself. This is the exact point where the vast majority of people quit. They mistake the loss of excitement for a loss of alignment or capability, and they abandon the project to go chase the next shiny, new spark of inspiration. They spend their entire lives starting over, trapped in a cycle of shallow beginnings because they cannot tolerate the middle space of quiet repetition. Unstoppable individuals operate on an entirely different psychological framework. They do not rely on the unpredictable weather of inspiration or emotional highs to dictate their actions. They rely on the absolute certainty of their habits. They understand that compounding is the most powerful force in human development. Just as a small financial investment accumulates massive value over decades through compound interest, your daily actions compound into your ultimate destiny. Eating a healthy meal once does nothing for your body. Eating a healthy meal thousands of times changes your biology. Writing one page does not make a book. Writing a page every morning eventually builds a library. The individual steps are so small and seemingly insignificant that they feel like they don't matter in the moment, yet they are the only things that actually do. To survive and thrive in this monotony, you have to shift your relationship with the process. You have to stop looking at the daily routine as a tedious chore you must endure to reach a distant prize and start looking at the routine as the prize itself. When you anchor your satisfaction in the mere act of showing up and executing your baseline habits, you insulate yourself from the anxiety of delayed results. You stop checking the scale every morning or looking at the analytics every hour. You develop a deep, quiet pride in the fact that you did the work simply because you said you would. This standard of consistency builds an unshakable sense of self-trust. When you prove to yourself every single day that your commitments are non-negotiable, your confidence ceases to be an emotional state and becomes an objective fact. This commitment to the boring routine is ultimately what weeds out the competition. Most people are fully capable of working hard when they feel like it, when the stakes are high, or when someone is watching and applauding. But very few people are capable of working with the exact same level of intensity and precision when no one cares, when there is no applause, and when they are utterly exhausted. When you master the ability to execute the fundamentals flawlessly in the dark, you inevitably build a gap between yourself and the rest of the world that no one can close. You become a force of nature, not because you possess a rare, magical talent, but because you possess a rare, unbreakable consistency. You don't need a massive stroke of luck when you have the unstoppable gravity of a daily routine moving you forward. Human beings are fundamentally tribal creatures, hardwired over millennia to adapt to the environments we inhabit and the groups we associate with. We like to believe that we are entirely independent thinkers, that our ambitions, values, and mindsets are forged solely within our own minds, isolated from the influence of the outside world. But psychology and human history tell a completely different story. We are deeply porous creatures. We constantly absorb the emotional baselines, the spoken and unspoken standards, and the psychological boundaries of the people we spend the most time with. If you want to rapidly accelerate your growth and transform your life, you cannot rely entirely on your own willpower while remaining anchored to a social environment that pulls you downward. To become truly unstoppable, you must intentionally engineer your social ecosystem and build a circle of high expectations. Look closely at the mechanics of peer influence. It rarely happens through a dramatic, sudden pressure to conform. Instead, it happens through a slow, imperceptible erosion of your standards. When you are surrounded by a social circle that is entirely comfortable with mediocrity, complacency, and constant excuses, their baseline becomes your baseline. If everyone around you spends their evenings complaining about their circumstances, consuming mindless entertainment, and putting off their dreams until tomorrow, those behaviors begin to look normal, safe, and acceptable to you. Your brain naturally rationalizes this by telling you that you are doing fine because you are matching the speed of the pack. Over time, you subconsciously lower your own expectations of what is possible, settling into a comfortable rhythm of average performance simply because no one around you is demanding anything greater. If you want to break out of this trap, you have to actively seek out and surround yourself with individuals who hold themselves to a profoundly higher standard. You need an inner circle that looks at excuses not as comfort, but as a liability. When you enter a room filled with people who are actively pushing their limits, chasing massive goals, and practicing radical self-discipline, a powerful psychological shift occurs. In an environment like that, your normal excuses don't carry any currency. If you complain about being too tired to work, or if you blame external circumstances for a failure, a high expectation peer group won't offer empty pity. They will challenge your narrative, point out your blind spots, and demand that you take ownership. This friction might feel uncomfortable initially, but it is precisely the kind of heat required to forge a stronger character. Furthermore, being around exceptional people recalibrates your entire perception of what is achievable. When you watch someone close to you consistently execute difficult routines, build successful ventures, or maintain elite levels of mental and physical fitness, those achievements stop looking like distant, mythical anomalies. They become tangible, realistic, and normalized. You realize that the only difference between where you are and where they are is the consistency of their choices. This realization naturally triggers a healthy, constructive form of internal peer pressure. You begin to elevate your own daily habits, not out of a toxic need to compete, because you realize that your current output is simply insufficient for the level you wish to operate at. You naturally step up your pace just to keep up with the collective momentum of the group. This does not mean you must callously discard long-term friendships or treat people as transactional stepping stones. It means becoming fiercely protective of who gets access to your closest mental spaces. It means recognizing that your energy and attention are finite, and spending them on relationships that drain your ambition is a form of self-sabotage. You must actively find the mentors, peers, and communities that force you to stretch your thinking. When your inner circle is defined by high expectations, accountability, and relentless forward movement, you no longer have to fight the uphill battle of self-transformation entirely alone. The collective gravity of the group carries you forward, turning growth from an agonizing chore into an inevitable consequence of the company you keep. The moment we encounter an obstacle, a setback, or a failure, our brain instantly goes to work looking for an explanation. It is a deeply ingrained human survival mechanism to look outward, scanning the environment for a cause that exists outside of ourselves. We point to a shifting economic landscape, a lack of institutional support, the toxic behavior of an associate, or the unfair circumstances of our upbringing. We construct elaborate, highly logical narratives that explain exactly why we are stuck, why a project failed, or why we cannot make progress. On the surface, these narratives feel incredibly comforting because they completely absolve us of any blame. They assure us that our current situation is not a reflection of our capability or our character, but rather the fault of the world around us. However, this comfort is a profound psychological trap. The moment you blame an external factor for your situation, you hand over your personal power to that exact factor. You are essentially declaring that you are a passive victim of your environment, unable to change your life until the world decides to change first. To become truly unstoppable, you must completely reject this victim mindset and embrace the uncomfortable reality of extreme, radical accountability. Taking immediate ownership of everything does not mean you are responsible for every random, unfair event that happens to you. You cannot control the weather, you cannot control the macroeconomy, and you cannot control the unpredictable actions of other human beings. Bad things will happen, injustice will occur, and unexpected disruptions will throw your plans into chaos. But while you are never responsible for the event itself, you are always, without exception, entirely responsible for how you choose to respond to it. Extreme ownership is the deliberate realization that the event is neutral, and the outcome of your life is determined solely by the quality of your reaction. When you practice this level of accountability, your entire relationship with adversity undergoes a massive transformation. Instead of wasting valuable cognitive energy asking, "Why is this happening to me?" or wishing the world were different, you immediately ask, "What am I going to do about it right now?" You stop waiting for a savior, an apology, or a perfect alignment of stars, and you begin looking at the levers of control that are within your immediate grasp. Even in the most restrictive, unfair scenarios imaginable, you still retain complete sovereignty over your focus, your attitude, your work ethic, and your next strategic move. When you own the problem, you give yourself the unique authority to discover and execute the solution. You transition from a state of passive reaction to a state of active, aggressive agency. This shifting of perspective builds an incredible amount of psychological resilience. When you stop relying on external conditions to be perfect, you become highly adaptable. If the economy tanks, a person operating under extreme ownership doesn't spend months complaining. They immediately pivot their strategy, learn a new skill, or find an alternative market. If a critical team member walks out on a project, they don't sit around mourning the loss. They step into the gap, absorb the workload, and figure out how to rebuild. They understand that the world does not owe them an easy path, and that expecting life to be fair is a form of entitlement that breeds weakness. Ultimately, taking full ownership of your life is an act of supreme empowerment. It is the definitive boundary line between those who spend their lives drifting through excuses and those who actively shape their own destiny. When you look in the mirror and accept that everything you are experiencing, your current fitness level, your financial status, your career trajectory, and your emotional stability, is the sum total of your own choices and reactions, you unlock an unshakable sense of personal power. You realize that if your own decisions and reactions got you into your current situation, then your own decisions and reactions possess the exact power required to pull you out of it. You stop asking the world for permission to move forward because you have finally taken complete control of the wheel. To become unstoppable in 2026, you do not need to wait for a perfect moment, a massive stroke of luck, or a sudden burst of overwhelming inspiration. Transformation is not a lottery that you hope to win. It is an active architecture that you build day by day, choice by choice. When you anchor your life in a deeply rooted purpose, fiercely protect your focus from the noise of the world, and commit to the quiet power of a daily routine, you set an unshakable foundation. And when you surround yourself with an environment of high expectations and choose to take radical, absolute ownership of everything that happens next, you reclaim the ultimate authority over your destiny. The year ahead will inevitably bring challenges, disruptions, and moments of intense uncertainty. The world will try to distract you, and circumstances will give you every excuse to slow down or play it safe. But remember, your power does not come from having an easy path. It comes from your willingness to take imperfect, immediate action regardless of the terrain. Stop waiting to feel ready. Own your story, protect your energy, master the mundane, and step forward into the person you are fully capable of becoming. Your time is right now. Go take control, crush your goals, and become completely unstoppable.